What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Sanctuary. It's Kaz, it's Midnight Lights, and this is my full, comprehensive, in-depth how to beat and spare Yang guide. Yang is tough, so you're gonna want to watch this whole thing, get these tips and tricks in every aspect of the video, which I'm gonna go over now. So there are 8 parts of this video, starting with just some general tips and tricks before we get into the in-depth real ways you are going to end up beating Yang easily. Then we're going to scout and talk about all the different ways to counter his phase 1 attacks. I'm going to go through my phase 2 winning strategy, which you're definitely going to want to stick around for. And then I'm going to go into scouting and countering his phase 2 attacks, tips for phase 3, weapons to help, all of those shrine and skill upgrades you need to beat Yang. And then we're going to wrap up with a full video where I beat Yang uncut with commentary. Alright, so let's get started with tips and tricks. This is the first part of the video. Again, these are kind of general. The more detailed strategies you really need to beat Yang are later in the video. First tip, and it's typically my #1 tip for all bosses, is just know early on your only goal is to scout his moves and get his timing. It's not to beat him. So that means you're going to die a lot, and that's okay. You're really just going in, getting all of his moves, scouting his timing, when do you parry and avoid, and how can you counter and punish him best. And this video is going to help shorten your time on that by a ton. Next is, when you are scouting, just hold L1 a lot. It really helps with being able to master his timing and figuring out what his moves are, what they look like, the timing of it. So generally speaking, when you're scouting, you want to default to just holding block. That will get you his moves, and yeah, your structure will break from time to time, but that's okay because one, Yang helps you by basically letting your structure come back anytime you want, but also just because it's gonna help you. It's okay if your structure breaks a lot while you're scouting, right? Who cares? You're gonna die a lot. So like I said, in phase 1, he helps with your scouting because he'll let your structure rebuild. So if you're holding L1 the whole time, just to get his moves and timing, or start working towards a deflection or a perfect avoid, that's great because he's going to let you do it. So the best and #1 move for beating Yang in phase 1 is raining strikes, which is an unlockable skill where all you do is press triangle, a very brief delay, and then press it again. And you can do it twice during a vulnerability window with Yang, just like that. So it really is, it's not quite cheesing him, but it's not far off because it's just so effective. Seems to work every time there's a vulnerability window. So raining strikes is clutch for phase 1. For phase 2, I have a very specific winning strategy, but it's a little more in depth. So I'll just say stick around for that because it's huge and will help you beat phase 2 without dying. Another tip is listening for the stun because you'll be able to do a 3 or 4 phase combo when you stun Yang. So here's what it sounds like. That's the stun sound. So just remember, when you hear that, you know his vulnerability window's open a little bit longer, and you can do maybe a 4 phase combo where most of his windows barely let you do 1 or 2. Alright, the secret to beating any boss in Sifu, but it's like critical to beating Yang, is that you want to be able to defend his attacks and trigger and defend his counter. So here's what I mean by that. Yang will attack you voluntarily. You don't do anything, he starts an attack, and you want to be able to defend those. But sometimes the best way to beat Yang is actually to start an attack you know is not going to do anything, but that will trigger a counter from him, and that you'll be able to avoid and deflect his counters to open up a vulnerability window. So you're going to open up vulnerability windows based on his attacks and by triggering his counters that then you deflect and avoid. Don't worry, I know that's a little confusing, I got you. That's what the rest of this video is basically about. All of his attacks and how to defend them, triggering counters, and how to defend his counters. Alright, so generally, I'm going to default with Yang to avoiding mostly. I'm not going to try and parry and hit L1 at the perfect time all the time. I'm mostly avoiding. Sometimes I'm just blocking and holding L1, but I am deflecting selectively. And watch the rest of the video for all of the best places where you can deflect and then punish Yang. Now, of course, my last tip is like, yo, Yang is one tough hombre. This is really hard. It's the hardest part of the game, the hardest fight of the game. It's all hand to hand. It's really cool and fun. And this video is gonna help make it more fun because he's so tough. You just gotta know some little bits of strategy, a few of his moves, and then how to counter, and you'll be good to go. All right, here we are. All of Yang's phase 1 moves that I could identify, how to counter them and punish him. And how to basically win phase 1. So with Yang, the best way to beat him is to be able to defend his attacks and also defend his counters. So remember, attacks are when he starts a progression voluntarily, where he starts the attack phase, and then his counters are his responses to your attack phase. When you have a combo that goes too long, or you start attacking him while he's just kind of standing there, he's going to avoid or deflect and counter you. So that's important to know. We're going to go over Yang's 2 main attacks, the 2 things he does voluntarily that we are going to get really good at identifying and really good at avoiding and then countering. And then we're going to talk about triggering his counters, and then how do we respond to his counters that then open up another vulnerability window. So again, it's his 2 main attacks, his 3 main counters, and we're going to open up vulnerability windows for all of those. So his number 1 attack has this delay in it. And when we identify the delay, or this little skip, it tells us that this particular combo is going to end with a straightforward kick. So we're just going to avoid that kick when it comes. And you'll see the kick right here. We're going to avoid that and then punish him. So here it is one more time. Starts with a snap kick, then another punch. He skips away, and that's when we know, okay, it's going to end with the kick. There's the kick we're going to avoid and punish. So what we're doing to be able to really exploit this combo is anytime he starts a combo or an attack versus us, we're holding L1 to block. So we can identify it. It'll do a little damage to our structure, but not a lot. So we're holding L1, we're identifying, we see the skip. And when we see the skip, we're like, okay, all I need to do is avoid that straightforward kick at the end, and I'll be able to counter. Now, when you counter, it's important to use raining strikes, that unlockable skill, which is just pressing triangle, waiting for a split second, and pressing again. And typically, and why raining strikes is so clutch, as you can see here, is you can get in 2 raining strikes in a vulnerability window against Yang. Alright, this next attack looks very similar, except there's no skip, there's no delay. So let's watch it again. He starts with a snap kick and punch, and then there's no delay. And that tells us this combo ends with 2 elbows, and we need to avoid twice. So snap kick, punch, no delay. Here comes the 2 elbows, avoid, avoid, and then raining strikes. That's it. So once again, we're blocking anytime he proactively starts an attack. If he starts an attack, we're holding L1 to identify it. So I'm holding L1 this whole time. I'm like, okay, there's no delay. That means 2 elbows, avoid, avoid, and then counter with raining strikes. Triangle, slight delay, triangle, and then you can usually get in a second one. Triangle, slight delay, triangle. There's the 2 elbows. Here's the raining strikes. Got him. Yang does have a 3rd attack. He just doesn't use it that much, but when he does, it's wonderful because it's easy to spot, easy to avoid. So it's this sweep where he jumps back. There he goes. He'll get a little running start. The further you are away, the more you'll be able to identify it. You just avoid up and then counter with 2 raining strikes, or if you have a staff, light attacks. So now we're going to move into phase 1 counters from Yang. So counters are triggered by extending your combo a little bit longer to the point where maybe he's taking damage and now he's defending, and then deflects or avoids your attack and then launches his own. That's Yang's countering. Sometimes he'll do it too, and Yang in particular, if in phase 1 when he's just standing around and letting you get your structure back, and then you start a attack on him, he'll instantly avoid it and counter you. So this section is all about his counters and what you do to basically counter his counters. The first counter I'm going to go over is this low high. It's just 2 quick punches, and he'll follow it up with a kick if it lands. But what you want to do is avoid. So there it is. It's almost like a low high all in one swipe. We'll watch it again here. There it is. And you just avoid it. You may only have to avoid once. I think I do avoid twice, like I'm holding L1 and going away from him twice. You can do any direction but up. You just want to avoid. As soon as you know that parry's coming, generally it's good to default to avoid with Yang. Alright, Yang's second counter starts with a 1 flurry and then a 2 flurry like that. So you'll see me extend my combo there. He parries me. 1 phase, 2 phase, all raining strikes. So the best thing to do here actually is you're holding L1 here and you know the second one's coming. And then if you press L1 on that last strike, you'll actually deflect it and it'll open up a vulnerability window. You don't see me doing it here, but that's the best way to defend it. Oh man, I hate this counter. It's a crotch punch and then a second phase. And it's brutal because I felt like, I don't know if it's the timing or where he's punching, but I was only able to really consistently make this work by avoiding away. So when it comes, I'm holding L1 and pushing back. And so that's what I'm doing for this particular one. Generally, again, any counter he throws at you, I'm defaulting to holding L1 and then avoiding away from him because that worked best for me. There's one more slight addition to Yang's counters, and that's that sometimes with his low-high counter, he'll extend it with a 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 phase combo. So you just want to avoid that whole time. And that's really part of the main takeaways. When he proactively starts an attack or his attacks, you're just holding L1 and blocking until you know it's the 2 elbows or the straightforward kick, and then you're avoiding that. And then when you know you're about to trigger one of his counters, you're just ready to avoid. You can avoid all of his counters, and if you avoid any of them, it'll set up right. If you avoid well, it will set up a vulnerability window. Let's move into my winning strategy for phase 2, because y'all, phase 2 is hard. There's no breaks. He's always gonna proactively attack you, so it's hard to keep your structure down. It's hard to, phase 2 is probably the hardest part of the game, I would say. It's relentless. His attacks are extremely unpredictable. There are so many attacks, so even if you watch my video on scouting all of his attacks in phase 2, I don't even think I get to all of them because they're so varied and unpredictable. Some look the same but end differently. He has so many phase 2 moves and it makes it very difficult. Okay, here's my super secret equation for beating and sparing Yang in phase 2. So I'm going to review it here without any distracting video, and then we're going to watch it several times. So here's how it works. In phase 2, Yang's going to attack you all of the time. So you know that's coming, and when it comes, you're picking up on what it is, trying to block and avoid. And when you block or avoid, you're going to open up a vulnerability window. Hopefully, you don't have to, but hopefully you do. And when you do that, you're going to attack. Anytime you attack Yang in phase 2, it's very likely to trigger his counter so long as he's not stunned. Now, when you trigger his counter, and we're going to go over his specific counters, then you're going to pick up on that, deflect and avoid as needed, and that's when you're really going to punish him. And so, like I said, let's look at what that looks like so you kind of understand. So I'm going to be quiet, you just watch. So that's it. That's the progression. Let's go through it. So first, Yang is going to attack you. Here it comes. It's a jumping wall attack, and you avoid. That's the first phase. Then you start your attack in that vulnerability window, and that's going to trigger his counter. And then you deflect his counter, and then you're going to punish. I'm going to go over what specific moves and combos I use, but that's what it looks like. And when you're deflecting this particular counter before you punish, it's very similar. I'm just pressing L1, L1, L1. Just like that. That's all it takes. So you can see another one here. Boom. That's it. That's what's going to beat Yang. So here comes another one. Yang's going to start an attack. I'm blocking. I perfect avoid that. And then I start an attack. He counters it. And then I counter that move or deflect it. And that's where I punish with my crooked foot, which I'll go over. Alright, here are the moves behind what make this strategy work. There are two specific things you need to know really to make it work other than the equation and timing. So the combo I use when I open up that first vulnerability window is, here it comes, square, triangle, triangle, triangle. And every time I use this combo, it seems like he counters the last one. It triggers his flurry attack, his raining strikes that I then counter. And then when I counter him, like you'll see right here, there's the wall kick. Here comes his raining strikes. When I counter that, I use crooked foot. And all that is holding triangle. But here's the thing, y'all. You got to be ready, because that window for triggering crooked foot is very, very small. So just make sure you're ready, and as soon as you deflect his raining strikes, you're ready to go with crooked foot, and that will beat him every time. Of course, Yang's not going to make things too easy for us. He has a second counter, which is the same low-high counter attack he does from phase 1. So we'll watch it here. Here comes my attack. He's going to counter with a low-high. So that's okay. You're still going to do the same thing. Anytime you know a counter's coming from Yang, you're just kind of pressing L1, L1, L1. That's the best thing to do. It'll work for either of his counters. Another thing Yang does to complexicate things is he extends his low-high counter with raining strikes. So you'll see it here, low-high, and here comes the raining strikes. So when that happens, when that last strike comes at you, if you press L1, you'll deflect perfect parry and you'll be able to open up a vulnerability window. All right, let's do this. All of Yang's phase 2 attacks that I could identify and spot, there are so many, and also how to counter them. But I'm gonna make this a little easier for you, because actually the best way to beat Yang in phase 2 is to kind of follow this sort of rhythm, this sort of pattern. Which is, remember, in phase 2, Yang is going to attack you voluntarily. He's relentless. So here's, regardless of the attack, this is what you're going to do. He's going to start the attack. Here he comes with a sweep kick. So you avoid his attack. It opens up a window. And then you're going to counter with square, triangle, triangle, triangle. Now, when you do that, he's going to deflect it and come at you with a counter. So let's look one more time and I'll walk through it. So here's his attack. I avoid the last move, and then I'm going to do square, triangle, triangle, triangle. And on my last phase, he's going to deflect, but then I'm going to deflect his counter and hold triangle to do crooked foot. And that's the counter for all of the sort of equation, the rhythm, the flow of how I beat Yang. But let's start with his moves, starting with his snap kick to elbows. This is similar to phase 1. He'll start with a snap kick, a punch, and then 2 elbows. So you're just always kind of starting by blocking in phase 2. So I blocked those 2. I know elbows are coming. I kept blocking, but you can avoid those last 2. The next one is very similar. It's a snap kick punch to a sweep kick. Let's watch it in slow-mo and what we do with it. So here he comes, snap kick, punch, sweep kick you avoid, and then it's square, triangle, triangle, triangle. He deflects that, comes with his counter, which we're going to deflect, and then counter by holding triangle with crooked foot. Yep, that's right, y'all. We're countering his counters. So Yang has a few attacks that all start out the same with this strong uppercut, and this particular one ends with a sweep. You can't distinguish them except for the last move. Uppercut, straight punch, sweep. We avoid the sweep, and then yeah, launch back into our secret to success, square, triangle, triangle, triangle to crooked foot. But if he lands this sweep, which he definitely will do sometimes, you can ground counter. Again, it's hard to distinguish these uppercut moves from one another, so you might get swept. Now, he does telegraph his next uppercut combo a little bit. So you'll see here, if he starts an uppercut and then skips punches, then you know a high kick is coming. So let's watch in slow-mo and what we do to counter. So here comes the uppercut. He skips, so that tells us it's going to be a high kick, and we avoid. Follow up with our combo, square, triangle, 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 which he's going to deflect. Counter us, then we're going to deflect, and then we can move from there. All right, his third uppercut move, again, this is infuriating because we can't differentiate this from the sweep, but go ahead, let's look. Uppercut, multi-strike is coming, but that's okay, it's all right. Sometimes he'll sweep us, sometimes he'll land the multi-strikes. It's not the end of the world. The multi-strikes don't do a ton of damage, but you can deflect the last move of the multi-strikes, which will open up a vulnerability window. You just don't see me doing that here. Also has this infuriating, like, not strong uppercut that he follows up with a sweep. We'll try and get in slow-mo here. little mini uppercut. He follows up with a sweep. If he lands it, just use a ground counter. It's the best thing to do. It won't be too much damage. He also has this sort of 3 power move thing that he does. 3 strong attacks, which he brings at you, which we'll talk about what to do. So when he brings these, I just avoid away from him 1, 2, 3. So avoid back 1, 2, 3. Here it comes again. I'm holding L1 and back away from him in a like succession of 1, 2, 3, just like that. You do this right, you'll be able to have a great window for our secret sauce, which again, we have that vulnerability window and we're square, triangle, triangle, triangle. He deflects the last one, does his flurry attack or raining strikes. We hold triangle, we deflect that, hold triangle for crooked foot, money every time. He doesn't do his wall kick very much, and when he does, it's very easy to see and you just avoid it at the right time. Follow up with square, triangle, triangle, triangle. He'll deflect, raining strikes, you deflect, and then crooked foot. He also has this charge strike, which you can see here. And when you see that, just stay away. That's it. Just stay away. All right, I'm going to wrap this section up by going over Yang's counters. So the one we love, again, is his raining strikes, which we're going to counter the last one, and we're going to move into our secret sauce. So again, here's our attack. He brings the raining strikes. We deflect it, and then we hold down triangle for the unlock skill, crooked foot, and we got him. Another counter he has is a low high, which is like phase 1. And that's okay because we're going to be planning on deflecting anyway, or parrying, or just pressing L1 when he is about to go into a counter. So whether it's raining strikes or the low high, we're just kind of pressing L1 when a counter's coming and we'll be just fine. He has this extended one too, where he follows up with raining strikes. So either way, if we're just pressing L1 pretty consistently on any of his counters, we're going to get a deflection and then we can punish. Wow, we made it to phase 3, and that's really good news because phase 3 is not as hard as the other 2 phases, but it's really important to know how to beat it or else you'll get stuck here forever. So with that in mind, you can't die in phase 3, so that's important to know. Hopefully that offers you a little bit of relief because you got here, and you're only going to get to phase 3 if you spared Yang, so keep that in mind. To beat phase 3 and do so efficiently, you're just going to be holding L1 and blocking strikes. Don't worry about parrying or avoiding. You're just holding L1 and blocking until his raining strikes come. When his raining strikes come, you deflect the last move of that combo, hold triangle for the unlock skill crooked foot, and then you do some ground and pound or a sweep to punish him. So let's see what that looks like in slow-mo. So for this, I'm just holding L1. I'm blocking all of this till those raining strikes. When the raining strikes come, I say, okay, I'm going to parry or perfect parry or deflect that last move. So here comes the raining strikes, perfect parry, tap, hold triangle for the crooked foot, and then sweep or hold circle to ground and pound, and that'll work. So if you do that, his attacks are very repetitive, you'll be just fine. Let's talk about using weapons with Yang, which is not critically important. In fact, there's a pretty specific downside that makes me recommend you don't do it, but there are some benefits. So let's talk about where you can get a good weapon for Yang. There's a staff on the guy right before the room that Yang is in. So if you sweep and disarm him and get his staff, you will have a weapon for Yang. And the weapon can be good because when you do open up vulnerability windows, you'll be able to do light attacks, just square, 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 and that will do some damage to his structure and his life, which is great. Also, it really helps with pairing, so I actually really encourage when you're scouting Yang to bring the staff because it will mean he does less structure damage and you can get a better sense of his attacks. Now, the problem with having a staff is that you can't use raining strikes, which is triangle, slight delay, and hitting triangle again, or heavy attack, delay, heavy attack, which is critical to beating Yang, or just help speed up the process in phase 1. Okay, well, here are my recommended upgrades and skills for defeating Yang. Without a doubt, the hardest boss in the whole game. And you'll see me put 1, 2, or 3 asterisks next to these, which will kind of tell you how important I think they are. And you'll note that actually up to this point in all of my boss guides, I haven't put 3 asterisks next to any of these. But for Yang, I did put 3 asterisks next to some of them. Yang is going to destroy your structure, particularly in phase 2, and by now you're probably very good at avoiding. So structure regain helps you regain your structure every time you avoid, and has 2 asterisks because it's very important to beating Yang. One that's kind of helpful, not super helpful, is structure reserve, so just keep that in mind. Raining strikes is a critical move for beating Yang, because in phase 1 it's basically cheesing him. He's very vulnerable to raining strikes, so you definitely want to unlock that. Also, crooked foot is critical to beating Yang, given the way that I have sort of described is the best way for me to beat Yang, because anytime you're able to counter him and hold triangle, you can land that, and it does a lot of damage to his structure and life. Yang is very likely to sweep you in phase 2, but for whatever reason with him, anytime he sweeps you in phase 2, he's very vulnerable to the ground counter. That's why it has 2 asterisks. So you can see it here. It just seems like anytime he sweeps you, you can land the ground counter. Alright, here's my full beat and spare Yang video. This is putting into practice everything we've worked on so far. So you see I do come in with the staff. I don't typically, but I did for this because I just wanted to kind of show you, you know, the many different parts of all of the different tips I offered here. So you're seeing me kind of go through my secret sauce here, right? Is that I am not just responding to his attacks, I'm responding to his counters as well. So I'm going to actually get him to attack me by pushing right on the D-pad to sort of cajole him into attacking me, because he'll just stand there for a while if he doesn't. I'm impatient, y'all. So that I knew that combo was going to end with a straightforward kick. I land a couple of strikes. I keep my combo going, hoping to trigger his counter. And when I trigger his counter, I know, okay, I'm going to do some avoiding and be able to then counter his counter. But I'm just not that worried about... I can be pretty aggressive with Yang, 1, to kind of keep damaging his structure, but 2, because... yeah, I've gotten to know his counters as well as his attacks. That hurt a little, though. All right, let's get this up and get this going again. Let's look at some moves in particular. So again, he'll just stand there, but I'm going to provoke that counter, that 2-phase counter, ready to avoid it, and then counter his counter. So that was a counter, that little up-down swipe. And those are the heavenly strikes that just, or excuse me, raining strikes, which just seem to get his goat every time. You can do, in a vulnerability window, you can typically get 2 rounds of raining strikes in. There's 1, see if I can do 2. Oh no, he kicked my ass on that. Okay, well, not every time. That's the beauty of Yang. He's tough. He's real tough. But typically you can get 2 rounds of raining strikes in. See if I can get 2 this time. That's 1. Oh, I didn't even do raining strikes. But he counters with his own raining strikes, and I'm just avoiding when he counters, and that's doing just fine. So he did that attack, I avoided. Anytime he does an attack, I'm ready to start avoiding or just blocking, holding L1 till I figure out what he's coming at me with. So he did a little skip. That tells me it ends with a straightforward kick. There's 1 heavenly strike. There's 2. You can typically do that. So there, I knew it was coming with 2 elbows because there was no skip or delay in it. And I punished him for that.
Do better. Try harder.
Yeah, sometimes he'll do that snap kick and punch to the gut, and he'll just stop there if I'm far away. So no delay in that combo. That tells me it's the 2 elbows. I'm avoiding those. 2 raining strikes. Got him. Phase 1 done. Didn't die once. I am going to die here in phase 2 once, though, unfortunately. So again, you don't have to... If he attacks you in phase 2, you don't have to avoid or perfect parry or deflect to start your attack. It's okay because we want to trigger his counters because we're ready for him, just like that. Trigger that counter, deflect at just the right time, and then do the crooked foot like I lined up for you earlier in the video. Let's see if we can get another one of those phases in. Uppercut and a skip. That means it ends with a high kick. That's my square triangle, triangle, triangle combo, but he doesn't follow up with a raining strike. But that's okay because we're just going to parry anytime. We're going to just be tapping L1 anytime his counters come at us in phase 2. Snap kick, no skip. That means it's a sweep. He came at me with his raining strikes counter. I know to just tap L1 a few times when he does that, and I'll do a good deflection, and then I'll crooked foot his ass. There's the raining strikes again, deflected at the right time. Crooked foot, got him. Knew the sweep was coming. Here's my square triangle, triangle, triangle. And that's his extended counter, which again is hard to be ready for. Then he landed those 3 strong attacks on me, which did a ton of damage. Stunned him there and could land the square triangle, triangle, triangle. This is where he gets me. Oh, when he crooked foots me, man, it's the worst. Yang's so tough because he's just you. He's just you. He has all of your moves and then some. So it's kind of cool by the developers to basically make you beat yourself, only your better self. 3 attacks. I'm just avoiding away from him. Bringing the square triangle, 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 which then triggers his counter, and then I counter his counter and crooked foot him again. That's the secret sauce. I know I keep saying it. It's just really the way that I was able to beat Yang most consistently. Uppercut with a skip means it's going to be a sweep, and then that triggers my secret sauce too. He's really bringing those sweeps. Bingo. That's it. That was more of the secret sauce there. Again, if you can get 4 or 5 of those phases in of the secret sauce equation, man, you're in good shape. Let's just kick him while he's down. So we got to break his structure twice, remember, to spare him. So we broke it once. He's got quite a bit of life left. That's why you really don't have to worry about it too much. You just have to stay persistent. You can't let him rebuild his structure. There's another secret sauce combo. It's not cheesing because he has so many different attacks, at least in my opinion, but it is a good way to get him. It's a good way to, there's got to be some way to beat Yang, right? So I see the sweep, come at him with square, triangle, 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 secret sauce, and then I spare him. All right, as with, if you spare him twice, it'll send you into this 3rd phase, and let's talk about that. So in phase 3, it's important to know, A, you can't die. It can be a bit of an endurance test, though, if you don't know how to efficiently damage Yang's structure. So that's really what we're going to do here. We're going to stay on top of him by basically responding to the combo he uses the most. And again, it's just more of the secret sauce from before. He's just doing his raining strikes a little more often. So you'll see there's this first part of a combo, and then he'll do raining strikes, and we're just going to deflect during the raining strikes, hold triangle, and do a crooked foot. So again, he sort of starts with all of that, but always seems to end with raining strikes. So I'm just getting ready to press L1 at the right time, and then ending with a crooked foot, putting him on his ass, and then typically sweeping while he's down to kick him. And you can see I get through phase 3 very quickly here because I know raining strikes are coming that often, and boom. That's it, got him. And if you've spared all the other bosses and get through this phase 3, you're good. You don't have to spare him twice in phase 3 to get the secret ending or the best ending or the proper ending, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, this is a very long video. This is a video that goes over everything you need to really have the toolkit to beat Yang, to spare him, and get that final ending. Some of you aren't even going to see this because you've maybe given up on Sifu, but if you haven't, I congratulate you. I love this game. It's so fun, and the better you get at it, the more fun it is, in my opinion, because there's so much skill involved. So there it is. That's my entire how to beat and spare Yang video. Everything you need to know. I hope you liked it. Again, thanks for watching. It's Kaz with Midnite Lights. You can check me out on Twitter and Instagram. Midnite spelled a little bit differently. Don't forget that as soon as I hit 1,000 subscribers, if I ever make a single penny off any of my videos, half of that penny and any other penny I make or dollar I make is going to go to a charity that me and my subscribers choose. All right, thanks. Peace.